Hello people, and welcome back to part 60 of Burgusia, the City Skylines build guide. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. This episode is particularly special for a few reasons. This week, and particularly today, the 28th of April, the channel is officially 1 year old. It is our first birthday, and within that time frame, we managed to hit 8,000 subscribers. I think we're at 8,100 now, which is mind-blowing, just so crazy. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to take a city-wide Burgusia tour. We're going to look at everything. I'm going to kind of talk about it, and then we'll kind of move into a nice little musical cinematic pan like we usually do. I'll kind of discuss what I like about the area, what I wish I would have done differently, and just kind of, what general thoughts I kind of have on the particular build. I would also love to know which build is your favourite. Please let me know down in the comments. I'd be really interested to know which kind of build you prefer in this map. But yeah, let's go ahead and get stuck in with where we started Burgusia, over on the island. So this is where the build guide started, right on this little island here. And I guess it kind of looks like a heart, right? And it sits right in the middle of the river that flows out in towards the ocean. And this is kind of humble beginnings, right? So the city started out from this roundabout here. The two roads from the highway are kind of what we started with the map. And we just kind of expanded a nice kind of suburb around here using some pretty generic suburban patterns. Nothing too special, just kind of your usual starter city stuff. We also began to formulate kind of a town centre around this little park here, and included this little bus stop here that runs into the downtown, so it's kind of like a long haul express bus. And there's actually a little bit of traffic backing up along this roundabout at the moment, so it's interesting to see kind of what problems develop later in the game. But yeah, so we got a couple of bus lines that run around the island as well. There's a community school around this little town centre. A little further kind of north on the island, there's kind of a little green cities vibe going on. Got some nice little local organic produce specialization buildings happening here. There's a botanical garden, and kind of these little park areas going on. Just trying to play with a couple of different ideas. Now looking back now, this area looks really underwhelming. When I first kind of built this area, I was super excited for it. I thought it was going to look really, really good. But kind of as time has gone on and we've come up with new ideas, and you guys have dropped suggestions into the comments, these areas have kind of become a little bit obsolete. Kind of heading further deeper into the island still, we're coming up to kind of our little beachfront here. This place looks really, really nice. I really enjoyed building this. You guys really enjoyed it as well. We played with a couple of rock assets kind of in the bay, almost as like there's been something of a landslide. There's a little kind of mini nature reserve here as well with some camping tents and a couple of the nature reserve props. This turned out really nicely. Again, you can kind of see how this rests on the cliff of the island. This was a great little idea from one of you guys. And again, there's kind of a major public transport terminal on the island as well with the ferries. We did try initially to put the ferry and bus depot here, but it was glitching out for some reason. The buses wouldn't go into the depot. I don't know why that was. You can still see we have detailing around here to do as well. There's a lot of kind of empty spaces that need fleshing out with trees, so I still need to come back and do that at some point. Ferries are nice and busy. These travel all over the map. They head over into kind of the airport. There's one right into the kind of the downtown, right further up the river, so they're getting lots of use, which is good to see. And then again with the beachfront, we went with the leisure specialization, so we have a lot of kind of nightclubs and bars and gyms and cool, hip, trendy stuff like that, all along the kind of looking out over the beach. And we got basketball courts and volleyball courts, and the skate parks here as well. So I'm really happy with the way the island beachfront turned out, and it's not the only beachfront in the city as well. There is a couple more, which will be fun to play with. So before we actually leave the island, we have kind of this little rectangle of land that hangs right beneath our highway. And this is the prison island. So this was built a very long time ago, and we didn't actually build it in an episode. It was kind of done in between episodes and then shown a little bit on camera kind of as we added to it. And it actually turned out really nicely. We ended up elevating an industrial road to kind of get into this thing, so it is kind of like, you know, it's like a one-way access, I suppose. You know, there's only kind of one way in and out of this island was the idea I was going for, and I think it worked out nicely. You know, you can just see the industrial road is very slightly elevated. And there is also industrial roads all over this island as well. We combined a couple of little office zonings, almost as like administration type buildings. And we also added in the police helicopter depot from the Natural Disasters DLC, and also a regular police station as well. And we added in a small warehouse. Again, it's kind of like a little storage yard for the prison, was the idea we were going for. And then we obviously surrounded it with the oil industry fence as well. So, leaving the island onto the first bit of the mainland, we arrive at what was the city's first kind of major industrial sector, and this is the forest industry. This has changed quite a bit since we first built this, and it actually proved to be one of the most popular earlier episodes, this little forest industry. And it actually sits really nicely, but obviously since kind of things have changed, the road layout doesn't really match it anymore, so we definitely need to kind of work on that at some point. Just need to rework it so it flows kind of around these little blocks of forestry. Also tried to combine the sapling fields with the tree fields as well, just to kind of give that impression like, you know, one of these fields has just been harvested. Some typical storage units, and we also messed about with a little kind of office park design. This looks really basic now. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this anymore. It kind of just sits right in the middle, but you know, it's always nice to reflect on kind of what you built and thought looked good at the time, and as to what looks like total arse right now. Lying just next to our forest industry lies our nuclear industrial complex. So the whole idea behind this process was to create a dedicated block for our power, because a lot of the times when you're kind of playing Cities Skylines and you need a power station, obviously once you've placed your first one you might mess about with your budget a little bit, but then you'll just kind of place another power station as you need one, and they never really kind of get their own dedicated space. So I thought we would try and do something with that idea with this nuclear compound. So we used a couple of buildings like the Nanotechnology Research Centre and kind of, I think this is the Research Design Centre or something like that. They're all from the high-tech content creator pack, and a couple of little water reserves in here as well, water reservoirs I think they're called, from the Natural Disasters DLC, and of course the 2 nuclear power plants. It's these and the dam that provide all of the power for Burgusia. And I think it turned out really nicely. There was a lot of really nice comments on this episode. You guys really enjoyed it. It's definitely one of the favourite builds. We tried to integrate a canal, although at the moment we do have a water pumping station in here. I want to change this to an outflow pipe, so it's almost like it's dumping nuclear waste into this canal, which then flows into the ocean. So kind of moving a little further down the coastline now alongside the highway, we arrive at the University of Technology. So this was the first university that we built in the city, and I wanted to kind of integrate a road network into it, which I think turned out nicely. This is probably my second favourite university in the city. I wanted to integrate a lot of these really big important buildings up alongside the highway, so kind of as you were driving past it and taking a look from the roadside, you had this really kind of big important complex that was obviously something fairly significant, like kind of an institute of technology would be. Tried to make a little central point opposite the police academy here with some paths and one of the University of Technology statues. And we tried to make a little dedicated area for dormitories up alongside the water here, integrated one of the water keys, which turned out alright I think in the end. And you can just kind of get a general look as to how all the buildings are placed around this kind of road network. And yeah, this is it was definitely one of my favourite builds in the city. In terms of kind of improving this, I wish maybe we would have done a little more something interesting with the road layout. It's all very rigid and at 90-degree angles and quite straight and maybe a little boring for some people. But yeah, the University of Technology is alright in my opinion. So residing just next door to the University of Technology was the city's first kind of farming town, and we had a lot of fertile land over here, and you can see there is quite a fair old chunk of farmland here. And we have a train station in this town and kind of a nice little riverside suburb. There's a nice little elevated bike path that flows alongside the river here as well, and this looks really nice. The elevated bike paths are quite an underrated thing to use. They really help just decorate those kind of empty spaces you might have. There's also a ferry depot in this town, which is getting lots and lots of use, and this is coupled with kind of a little tram park. Now this is the first kind of time we played with this tram park idea. You guys would have seen it in a couple of other places around the city, alongside in its own kind of dedicated modular build as well. And this takes people into the next town over and alongside this town. We also began to kind of play with some decoration ideas, like in front of the community school here, using some fences and trees and paths to kind of separate it away from the main road. There's more local and organic produce stuff all along here as well, which fits in really nicely with the trams down this main road. And we have a really nice border between the town and the actual farming industry, using a little bit of fence and some kind of tree borders. And this kind of little high street actually turned out really nicely. The farm receives an awful lot of traffic, as you can probably tell. So yeah, this town was one of the first kind of smaller ones we built away from the island. And it's not turned out too badly, in my opinion. Things that would have improved, I think we probably could have made better use of all the space in this part of the area. Maybe the farm is a little too big and the town's a little too small. And we're probably paying for that now with the amount of traffic that this thing produces. So it's nice to kind of get a little hindsight look as to what can be improved for next time. Leaving the farmland town, we arrive at kind of the first major interchange project that we worked on in Burgusia, and this is the Diverging diamond that links the farming town and the University of Technology with the kind of wider town of Braithwaite, which we'll be arriving at momentarily. So this thing also has a tram bridge over it, and there's lots of really nice different layers about this interchange, and this is one of my favourite things about it. You have kind of the bottom highway road, which is the main highway, and then obviously the two diverging diamond roads, and then also the tram bridge as well. So there's kind of 3 different tiers to this. We did some nice decorating with some bushes around kind of the little, I don't know, I guess kind of weird shaped triangles that are in here, and either side of it. And yeah, it turned out really nicely. It would have been nice to kind of integrate a footpath in here, which I guess we can still do, so we probably will do that at some point as well. And previously, before this thing was actually here, there was a dumbbell interchange. However, it would just not handle the amount of traffic that was coming through. But the diverging diamond is just distributing them as and where they need to go. So super successful little project, and yeah, I really enjoyed building this, and you guys enjoyed it as well. So now we are arriving into the wider town of Braithwaite. So this thing has got a lot of different features in it, so we'll kind of go over some of the main ones. So we kind of have this little ring suburb going on, and you can see where it ends, where the previous map border was. Obviously now we've unlocked more space, so we can expand further and further up into the hillside. There's also kind of a big, kind of wider city park in here. The things I wish I would have improved about this, I kind of winged the circular roads here. I didn't measure them out properly, and that's something that I wish I would have changed. I wish I would have had kind of a main, kind of like a boulevard or avenue flowing right through the middle of the circle, cutting it in half. Braithwaite Town Centre was a really popular episode. We used the tax office for this, a couple of parks with trees. There's a metro station here as well. Bus lines converge at this point, alongside a little tram interchange that we built. This is really one of kind of my favourite smaller builds within the city. This little tram park interchange right here. It's got elevated zoo paths, which of course are always a winner. Lots of little kind of park asset placements in. There's cafes and like the little picnic tables and flower beds. Also integrated some green cities zoning in to get one of the car parks in here too. And yeah, this town centre is also headed off by a library. Yeah, this was certainly one of my favourite builds, and this was kind of one of the first episodes of the build guide that really took off. This got really good views, really good engagement. You guys really enjoyed building this town centre along with me. Kind of further away from this town centre, we have our baseball stadium, which is kind of flanked by another tram interchange here. You can see it kind of splits into 3 lines, and then they disperse around other areas of Braithwaite town. I did some light decorating around here with some of the more beautification props. And of course it all helps serve the baseball stadium, which is one of the busier assets in the game. One of the tram lines does actually lead into our fancy nightlife sector. And we kind of made a little man-made lake here, surrounded with some bushes. Used the ziggurat garden to kind of head off this area with a nice unique building. Turned out okay. Did some really fine micro detailing along the back of these nightlife stuff here just to kind of show off what you can do with some very light prop modding to get all these little assets in here. So it's kind of like little, like little backyards for all of these little nightclubs that are around here. There's also a very small park integrated into the area. You can kind of see how it flows with all the little pathways, and there's chessboards and gazebos and plazas in here as well. And yeah, I really like the thought of this area. However, I wish we would have kind of expanded it, given ourselves a little more room. But at the time, which you can probably tell by the shape of the roads, we were building against the map boundary, so you can really tell where those areas are. There's also another tram roundabout in here as well, which looks really, really sweet. Did some nice detailing with some trees and some paths that surround the actual tram line itself. So right on the opposite side of our baseball park here, we had our first little, well not little, quite enormous batch of high density green cities housing. And this is probably one of my least favourite parts of the city, in terms of the fact that it's too high for this area. Hopefully that makes sense. I really wish that we would have put a high-rise ban within this particular district here, just because these houses, the transition is extremely harsh. You can kind of see it here within all these little clips, just how it just shoots straight up into these high rises. Maybe kind of one or two of these would have been great, and implementing the green residential estate modular build here would have been a much nicer way of introducing these high rises rather than cramming them into these grids. But you know, you live and learn. And yeah, I really wish this area would have changed, but we've got some nice little tram lines that run through here. There's community pools. Further afield, we also integrated a little theme park into here. This was the first theme park we built. Although it's a little rough around the edges, it was really just a means to unlock all the assets to build our main theme park on the other side of the downtown, which we'll get to later on. And there's also a cute little school park design in here as well, using lots of different paths and bushes and props to help make our schools for this area a little more important and recognisable. And there's also a whole bunch of low density green cities housing around here too. A couple of little basketball courts integrated throughout here as well. So nothing particularly too special about this area. It was really just kind of a collection of experiments with green city stuff and a couple of different park ideas as well. We're now going to take a look over at Burgusia Lake. So this was kind of a natural body of water that comes with the Marin Bay map, and we decided we'd make a little bit of a tourist hotspot out of this. So we added in a bunch of leisure specialisation stuff. There's a zoo here as well that kind of is integrated into the lake with, I think it's like the sea life feature or something. I also used some of the elevated nature reserve paths, which have kind of this like mossy looking kind of old rickety bridge type thing, and this worked in kind of really nicely with kind of the swamp theme we were going up along this side where the zoo resides. There's a train station here as well that serves this particular part of Braithwaite, and a little kind of elevated path that takes people to and from the lakefront. So really good public transport access into here. We also added in an office park, but again, we should have added in a high-rise ban here. These two office buildings in particular are very kind of garish, you know, the very kind of immediate harsh transition, and they don't really fit the theme. There's also a ferry depot here again, which kind of links into the wider ferry network of Burgusia that we've seen already. And I also added in some nice waterside quays here as well. The suburb extends down towards the Diverging Diamond interchange too. And yeah, the Burgusia Lake was a nice idea. However, I think we could have done a little better in practice to make this thing look a little bit more refined. But overall, it's not too bad. Okay, so moving towards the very edge of this corner of Burgusia, we come to the university town and you guys know I am very much in love with this build. So we did this over a number of episodes, and we also did a modular build on kind of this exact university layout with this outer road that runs around it. This is definitely my favourite type of universities to build. Wanted to get lots of open green kind of spaces and parks within this campus rather than cramming all the buildings together. We made a really nice kind of grand entrance using some of the statues and the fountains that come with this type of university. Also integrated a couple of varsity sports buildings like the track and field and the baseball stadium, and then added kind of a wider town around it, including some green cities houses to kind of function as like student flats. That idea kind of worked out. It's a little bit kind of mix and match with the zonings. Again, maybe a high-rise ban would have been nice there. I think there actually might be one, but I think it just the shape of the zoning tiles isn't really what I had in mind. But, you know, it's nice to try the idea. Further away as well, we have kind of a beachfront for the students to enjoy. There's some leisure specialisation down there as well, alongside kind of the old town unique building. And we did some really nice kind of roundabout design with the two of the three important buildings that come with this particular type of campus. I think it's the School of Science and the School of Medicine. We also have a really busy train station in this part of town as well. Introduced some nice parkland around that with kind of the bouncy castles and the large playground. And yeah, this town is certainly one of my favourites, and you guys have seen it many times, and you'll get to see it once more again today. So leaving the university town and heading right across the river, across this kind of major suspension bridge, we arrive at the recently built airport island. Now this was kind of an idea generated around the fact that we had no real flat land left to build in Burgusia. The empty spaces we had were more around kind of the hillsides, and placing the airports there would have been an absolute ball ache. So I was like, no, we need to make an island. So this turned out really nicely. However, as we finished this project, literally Sunset Harbour was announced like 2 days afterwards, and we realised we were getting a new metropolitan airport, which was really annoying. But still, you know, at least we got a new airport asset. So unfortunately, the metropolitan airport won't make an appearance in Burgusia purely because we have this dedicated space for our air traffic. And we also integrated, I think it's kind of like the luxury hotel into here as well. Maybe it's a little too tall to be this close to an airport, but I'm sure, you know, kind of the aviation safety regulations let it pass. There's also another ferry depot here as well. Again, we're kind of tapping into that wider ferry network for our Sims to get around. And there's also a big multi-platform end station here as well, which feeds into kind of the wider Burgusia rail network. The traffic out of this thing is hooked directly into the highway, so it works really nicely. Everyone flows into wherever they want to go, and there's adequate public transport options for them as well. It turned out really nicely. This is definitely one of my more favourite builds of Burgusia, this little airport island, and you guys really enjoyed it as well. Moving away from the large airport island, we arrive at the oil town. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with this particular build. So the oil town isn't really one of my favourites. The terrain was very tricky to work with because a lot of the oil assets are quite large, which means that they kind of really heavily cut into the terrain. You know how it works with City Skylines. But we managed to get our oil refinery in here. We've also got a couple of cracker plants in here too. A nice little kind of oil storage facility again, but it just feels very, excuse the pun, unrefined. We've also got a couple of cargo train terminals here as well, and there's a fairly substantial highway interchange to help all the heavy cargo traffic move kind of in and around the rest of the Burgusian highway network. We also have, which is kind of the love part of this particular town, the international train separation system. So we built this because the intercity trains that were coming from outside the map were merging onto the same lines as our passenger trains, which was causing a lot of backup, which is obviously not particularly good. So what we did was, right where the intercity trains enter the map, we allowed them to end at one particular train station, and then Sims can cross over the elevated zoo path, of course, into a train station that handles the rest of the Burgusia rail network. So they have to switch from one station to the other if they want to use train transport. You can see from these clips just how busy these train stations are. This worked out really nicely. The traffic around the area is still flowing great. They have access to the airport from here as well, and of course they're kind of getting across the rest of the map via the train network, which is probably the most efficient way to move this amount of people, if not metro. And we often have a couple of questions on the channel as to why we don't have any kind of heavy metro in this area. And I'm really kind of basing this off of England's metro system, particularly the London Underground tube. They're kind of within the inner cities and the surrounding suburb of the downtown. Like, we don't really have tube stations in kind of the larger towns, so that's why there is no tube network in this particular town, because it is a larger town. And we also began to formulate a new town centre around here as well, using the, I think it's called the Science Centre. It's the building you get from hitting a level 5 University of Technology. Integrated some really nice kind of tram stops here. We have a lovely little tram plaza outside with, again, an elevated zoo path. And some nice little parks and paths just to help decorate it out with mix and match some zonings in there as well. Made a cute little office park to sit up alongside the high street. We also made kind of a duo park combining a city park and a zoo. Again, this was another little idea from Imperator, so if you haven't checked it out, you can pick up really awesome little ideas from this. From him on his channel like this. We also added in some cul-de-sacs, which was a suggestion from our moderator Pro Panther. Kind of adding the 2-lane road at the end of these little residential streets kind of turns them into little cul-de-sacs with the almost like the bulbous end at the end of the road. And yeah, this town is still yet to be finished off. You can see where we're planning to build from these clips. And yeah, it's a cute little town. And we also have kind of a toll road that feeds into the main interchange. And we also have a kind of a really nifty kind of 3-tiered highway interchange here as well, where people can switch on and off the airport roads and head further into the countryside on kind of this 2-lane national road that runs to this part of the town. And yeah, I really enjoyed this particular build itself. And just next to our science and oil town lies one of the more recent builds of Burgusia. This was our green farmland town, which we built recently. And you guys really enjoyed this. It was kind of an idea, a premise of combining a industrial area with a lot of residential. And I thought that the green cities kind of sustainable housing specialisation alongside the industry's farming stuff would work really nicely. And I think it did. We did lots of nice little suburban detailing around here, including some nice little parks around the front and the back of the schools. Some lovely little paths through there as well. Made a nice little kind of bridge, pedestrian footpath kind of pattern around the entrance to the town, which is something I've never thought of before. I never know why I've not put the bridge over the top like that. It really just helps add a different layer of height. And yeah, it's a very small micro farm. It's almost like, the stuff that is produced here is sold locally within the local organic produce stores. Obviously, we will continue expanding this on a live stream at some point. But this particular town did turn out really nicely, and I'm looking forward to expanding it in future episodes. Moving away from the kind of smaller outer line towns and into the almost countryside of Burgusia, I suppose we arrive at the hydroelectric dam. So this is one of the smaller projects that we built. We obviously have some very kind of grand, important highway infrastructure here, including 2 separate rail lines, one for cargo, one for passenger trains. Obviously this enormous suspension bridge that kind of spans across the river. And of course we had the hydroelectric dam itself kind of blocking, or well, damming the water that flows out of the mountains down into the lake and then out into the wider river, and then obviously eventually the ocean. However, I didn't just want to build the hydroelectric dam and then leave it there, so what we did was we created like almost a little administration sector for this building. So you'd imagine, this is where the dam is operated from, all its controls, its documentation, etc. So we added in an office zoning building here, a lot of different fencing, some little kind of industrial props as well, like containers, and a couple of little industrial zonings just to function as like little warehouses where you imagine that they would store materials for the dam. So it was a really small project, but I think it fitted in really nicely with all these kind of larger transport bridges we've got going in. And yeah, this was a sub-favourite of mine, I think. As we continue exploring the countryside of Burgusia, we arrive at the national park, which is a collection of kind of very small clusters of assets from obviously the nature reserve, park life stuff. This area is still yet to be finished. We want to kind of build a couple of little towns along the various different lake shores we've got here. There's definitely some opportunities to do stuff. It's also hooked in again to that ferry network, so people can kind of cross into different areas from, all over the map. We also added in the toll gate right at the entrance, so we kind of, cheese our Sims wishing to visit the national park. And I know actually a lot of national parks, especially in the USA, they do have kind of like an entry fee. I think Yellowstone and Yosemite is one as well. And yeah, it turned out quite nicely. Got a lot of nice little kind of like lakeshore camping spots here. It's very cute. I do like it, and a nice little viewpoint up at the top here as well. But yeah, we will be returning here at some point to kind of add in some lakeside towns. That'll be really fun. And yeah, also have one of these kind of smaller towns right here alongside a train station, so people can kind of commute to this area via public transport. And a very small amount of forest industry just to kind of help add to that small town vibe where there's local forestry kind of produced and grown and whatnot. So this area is very patchwork at the minute. A lot of gaps still need to be filled in. So I'm looking forward to doing that as well. And also got a nice little wind farm in the national park as well. So it's got a really good shape to it. There's lots of kind of rolling hills and thick forests. So I'm happy with it so far. And we'll see what it's like when it's finished. Kind of the last aspect of the Burgusian countryside is the Mountainside town, which again was one of the more recent builds in the city. We wanted to kind of fill out this little mountainside that we had here. I wanted to create a very kind of lush, thick mountainside forest, which we managed to do with the more beautification mod. Or no, it's better landscaping mod, sorry, that gives you the tree brush for PC. And yeah, it's a kind of a real thick, dense forest that sits along the mountain, and there's a little town community in here as well, using a bunch of green cities housing, which I think fits the theme better than the regular residential stuff. Also threw in the Statue of Industry kind of as a nice viewpoint across the rest of the map, and you can see the view from this thing is just amazing. Really satisfying to see kind of all of Burgusia come together from this one viewpoint. We also introduced the city's first cable cars into this build as well, as they kind of climb up the mountain from the downtown, which we'll be arriving at in a moment. And they kind of head off up into the hillside, where at the very top, at the highest point, we have the observatory, which looks really, really great. We also had some really good comments of how to improve this within the comments of the episode, of course, including kind of adding in like a vineyard, which we have over here now, kind of alongside the road. We played with a couple of ideas on stream as to how to get it to fit in, and yeah, it kind of turned out nicely, and I'm pretty happy with it. But definitely factor in kind of a vineyard into a mountainside town a lot more. I think next time would certainly help to improve this thing a lot. So we're now going to leave the countryside of Burgusia and we're going to head back into something of civilization. And again, a fairly recent build within the city. This is our first fishing village that we made kind of for Burgusia. Obviously, with the recent release of Sunset Harbour, we kind of started to play with a couple of ideas here, and I felt maybe it was kind of too late to really formulate a solid fishing town. And this one, it's alright. It's not my favourite town within the map, definitely not. And yeah, it's okay. We still got a bit more room to expand as well over nearby side of the highway. But I don't want to make that kind of too dense because we're kind of approaching the national park here. Maybe some poor planning on my part as to where we actually place this. But it's got some nice detailing around it. We did some of kind of these, backyard detailings with the back alley running through them, which is the old Imperial Jedi technique. Nice little detailed roundabout over here as well. I'm going to place the fish factory up on the hill. That provides a bit of work and kind of resources for the people in this area. But the waterfront down here actually ended up turning out really nicely with kind of the fish market and the little kind of overgrown river side where the fish all comes in during the day. So it's not too bad looking, but probably not one of my favourite areas within Burgusia. Residing a little further up the road from the fishing village lies the University of Liberal Arts, which has been renamed by you guys into the BLACK, the Burgusia Liberal Arts College of Knowledge. I think that stands for. That was a subscriber comment. It really made me chuckle, that one. But yeah, we got some really nice designs going around here. We based our Liberal Arts College design off UC Berkeley in San Francisco. I think it's in San Francisco. We also had a nice little cliffside town here that is super busy because we have metro and rail and monorail all converging on one point here where Sims can switch to different lines, which is super great. We also added in the unique building, the clock tower here as well, to kind of formulate a town centre and make it a little more important, and also kind of factored in our first trolleybus lines here as well. I still think that the university, kind of like the main university, is really my favourite one to build. The assets from that one just work so nicely. But the liberal arts one has got some pretty cool things as well. And again, we carried on kind of doing that backguard detail in here. We also did some really nice work around the roundabout, creating some kind of open false parkland for Sims to enjoy. We did some really nice detailing around here as well. So this town turned out pretty nicely, and it sits against the border of the national park, and there's kind of a bit of no man's land between the two at the moment, which is something we need to fix, whether we turn that into kind of an expansion of the town, or if it just becomes kind of national park forest. Still yet to be decided, really. But I am a fan of this. We're also going to do some detailing down on the beach as well, at the bottom of the cliffside town, which will be really sweet. So yeah, it's a nice area, but it isn't quite finished yet. As we move away from the University of Liberal Arts, we arrive at the beginning of the kind of the main high-rises within this side of the river. So we decided to transition to a little bit of high-density residential nearby this beach, which turned out really nicely. We did all this on a live stream, and also built a little park for our monorail system to flow over, which looks really great with kind of the monorails passing over all the pedestrian footpaths. That idea kind of turned out really well, and I'm super happy with it. We then expanded down onto the beach again with a load of nightlife and leisure specialisation stuff, and also brought our tram lines down into here as well. So there's a really cute little tram stop on the beach, and yeah, looks really nice. The usual kind of tourism and leisure stuff alongside the beach here as well, with the marinas and kind of the fishing pier and whatnot, and the restaurant on the pier as well, I think is one of them. But yeah, this area turned out really nicely, and it looks great at night time as well because of all the little pink lights, and this serves as a nice little transition again into the high-rise of this particular area. Alright guys, so we're going to arrive into the first part of the secondary downtown now, and we're going to start looking at some of my favourite builds within the city itself. So I'm going to cut the commentary here. We're going to move into our little typical music kind of like montage, I guess is the word, and then we might pop back in for probably when we get to the other side of the river and explain kind of how the layout functions, and definitely for the transport hub as well. But yeah, so let's enjoy the next couple of minutes of this side of the downtown. Okay guys, so I hope you enjoyed that little montage of all the downtown areas right there. We had some really nice builds all through our downtown area, and I don't think there's any kind of section that's too high-rise, you know, that real Manhattan or Chicago vibe that you see most cities have. And I kind of like that about Burgusia. It's not too spammed with all these really tall buildings. They're kind of dotted around here and there. But now it's time to talk about our wonderful transport hub. So this is a lot of your guys' favourite build within this city, and we even did a tutorial, kind of a step-by-step, how to build this as well. And you'll have to excuse the frame rate within this area because it murders my PC, purely because of the amount of sims that come through here. So we have train, bus, metro, monorail and tram all converge into this one point, and you can just get a sense of how busy it is. We use some elevated paths to get sims from one side of the hub to the other, and it just turned out fantastically. It's also strategically placed near our entertainment centre, where we have all our stadiums and kind of expo centres. And yeah, this thing just turned out so nice, and yeah, definitely one of my favourite builds, and certainly one of your guys as well. And as we move towards the end of our list here on the Ultimate City Tour, we arrive at the major downtown residential block. Now, in all honesty, this is probably my least favourite build in the city. This is because I made the mistake of not applying a high-rise ban to this thing, and everything ended up growing super tall. If I apply the high-rise ban now, it absolutely murders the population. All of the buildings are deleted because they're basically all high-rises. It looks alright from the right angle, if that makes sense. You know, it's kind of, you know, it doesn't look too bad from behind. Is there the saying that comes to mind? But we use some nice little park decals here, kind of around the edge of it, and the walking paths that are kind of linked to this area get lots and lots of use, which is always nice, stops people from walking. There's also a nice little monorail system integrated here as well, and we were very careful in this area to get specific 4x4 zonings, which is probably why everything's grown so big. But again, my tip for a large residential block like this would be to use a high-rise ban, because it makes the transition around it very, very kind of hard to blend in. But yeah, it's not a bad area, but probably one of my least favourite in the city. And sitting at the foot of our major residential block lies our attempt at transitioning from low to high density. So we kind of mentioned, you know, that I wasn't really happy with that transition of the high residential block, so this was our attempt of trying to blend it in a little bit more. It turned out into a really nice suburb. We used kind of this little lakefront over here, coupled with the Japan content creator unique buildings, some kind of parks, a little bit of green cities in there as well. And yeah, just kind of wanted to use this space of a transition from industrial, which is kind of lying behind us where the port is, which we'll have a look at in a minute as well, into like an outer line suburb, and then you get those high rises. Lots of unique buildings in here, and it turned out pretty nice in my opinion. I do like this little suburb. So lying just behind the outer line suburb is where our kind of real heavy industrial stuff starts to kick off. So there are a few things here we'll talk about kind of in one go. So there's two main factories, which I think is the steel factory and the lemonade factory. I think are kind of the two major ones here. And there's also a really nicely detailed water treatment plant. And we made this in response to a modded tutorial from the official Cities Skylines channel, where they obviously use a lot of mods to put together kind of a functional water treatment centre. So I thought maybe we could do something similar using the Green Cities and Natural Disasters DLC stuff, and it turned out really nicely actually. I'm really happy with this, how it ended up looking. We've also got some light garbage processing stuff here as well, just to help serve all that demand from the downtown. These guys have access into the downtown pretty much straight away, and also back onto the highway as well. Our main port also resides here. This thing suffers from pretty bad traffic. This is not kind of my favourite build. I like the design behind it. We kind of cut all these peninsulas out using the terraforming tools and then put keys around them. There's a lot of different office buildings around here again, trying to go for that theme of like maintenance and administration for all the port stuff. You know, it's a lot of kind of exports and imports. You know, there's a lot of paperwork that goes with that, so there would have to be office buildings nearby. And we also put a toll gate in as well to kind of act as like a security booth, because obviously, you know, you can't just walk into a port in real life. They're pretty heavily defended and lots of security and whatnot. The train line also runs through here as well, and yeah, traffic isn't great, but aesthetically I'm pretty happy with it. And finally we arrive at the hillside community and its accompanying little town centre. As you can see, this is still very much a work in progress. We have lots of very empty green spaces that we need to fill out either with detailing, more zoning or trees. And the town centre still needs a little more refining as well, just to bring it all together. We had a look at Beverly Hills for this design, kind of how to fit lots of tight, packed, different shape housing into a specific area. And you guys really enjoyed it as well. We used the Theatre of Wonders, I think is down here as well, with one of the unique buildings, and we also added a zoo during a live stream. And there's still a lot of empty space on kind of the right hand side of this thing as well, that needs to be filled out with more residential. But again, we're just kind of waiting for the demand to come in and get that sorted. So still work in progress, but it's here for you to see and enjoy anyway. Okay guys, that is going to do it for today and the 6th city tour and first major city tour of Burgusia. I really hope you enjoyed it, and seeing how far this city has come for kind of the long time people that have been around since the start, and for the new people it might be nice for you to see some of the older areas in action as well. I just want to say a huge thank you for all the support on the channel over the last 12 months. As I mentioned at the start of this video, the 28th, which is today, is the channel's 1 year anniversary, and we've managed to hit 8,130 subscribers within that time frame. I never expected to break 100, so to hit that number is just mind-blowing. I appreciate all your guys' super chats, donations through PayPal. You really don't have to spend money on the channel. It means the world to me that you choose to do that. Honest, I can't put my gratitude into words, as you can tell. I've mentioned that we are coming to the end of Burgusia, and we will be doing it very soon. And there will be polls up on the channel as to what comes next on Cities Skylines. But enjoy the rest of this episode. We'll kind of have a little outro montage of some of our favourite areas, and don't forget to let me know which are your favourite areas down in the comments below. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day.